Hello everyone, this is Mr. Prometheus, and welcome to part 4 of the Comprehensive Mesmer Guide. I do apologize for releasing this video so late, however I want to let you guys know that the theme behind this video is builds and build theory, and in an effort to give you the best kind of information possible, I want to actually show you footage. So a lot of my time has been spent getting footage for you of various examples of what I'm trying to talk about, because I think that that's more valuable. I know that this is a build video, but I'm not actually going to be showing you a lot of specific builds, so don't look for that. It's not what I'm trying to do here. The reason for that, by the way, is because I don't actually think it's worth it to make a specific build and say this is the build you should be playing. Now in my video number 2 I showed you the build that I used for leveling up because I found it pretty strong, but that doesn't mean that you can't get creative with it. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk about what I call build theory. And what build theory means is that you use a theme behind what you're doing. So the first question you ask yourself is, what is the purpose of this build? And then you build around the idea. And Guild Wars 2 is very good at making that happen. You can create an idea and then move on. So without further ado, we're going to get into that. But really quickly, I also want to address the changes that they made to Greatsword. Since I reviewed it in my first video, they actually updated it and made it a much better weapon. So I have my Greatsword equipped here. What they actually did is they made Spatial Surge much faster. So you can see how quickly it shoots now. It actually is a much quicker cast. And if I go shoot an enemy here, you can see how quickly it recharges. So it actually does a lot more damage than it did before, not through actually doing more damage itself, but just because it happens to shoot much quicker. So I think that that's actually pretty good. Additionally, what they also did is they made Mind Stab, they made it a much faster cast as well. You're still rooted and it still has a very small reticle, but it does cast quite quickly in comparison to what it used to do, and I think that's actually quite good. The changes that they've made, I don't love Mind Stab even still. It's on a longish cooldown and it doesn't do that much damage. I mean, its base is 651. I'm in some power gear here right now, and it's just not that good. Either it should always hit the target like it did in the betas, and I don't know if some of you guys actually played in the betas, but it hit the target every time, and you didn't have to put a reticle down, or it needs to do a lot more damage. And the boon removal is not good enough of a trade-off, in my opinion. Spatial Surge is great, though. It's actually quite a high damage dealing ability now. Incidentally, if you're PvPing, be careful with Spatial Surge, specifically because people will be able to find out exactly where you are, because Spatial Surge is a gigantic purple line and it points right to you, so just be careful. But overall, I think the Greatsword should be upgraded to probably like an A-. I think it's quite a good weapon. I use it in World vs. World a lot because this Phantasm, the Phantasmal Berserker, is the only one that you don't quite need line of sight for, and you can actually summon it up onto walls and stuff. And I have some great footage of that to show you. So I do think that the Greatsword changes are really good. Additionally, there have been some Mesmer nerfs since our last discussion. Primarily, the biggest one was the change to the Phantasmal Duelist. You can see actually on the tooltip here, they've actually added a cast time too, which is really lovely. They didn't mention this in the patch notes, but that's what that number 1 is. But they upped the recharge on it from 15 seconds to 20 seconds, which is a lot. That's actually quite a big nerf. And some other Phantasms got nerfed as well. And also the staff itself got nerfed. The cooldown on Chaos Armor was increased to 35 seconds, and Chaos Storm was also increased to 35 seconds. So, or they actually brought them both to 35 seconds, is what I mean to say. This isn't really that bad, and I'll tell you why. The first is that with the pistol primarily, and you can apply this to all of the Phantasm nerfs. There are ways to reduce the cooldown in quite a substantial manner. So if we take, for example, let's see here, where is it? Duelist Discipline, and they actually haven't even bothered to change the tooltip. It says Pytal skills still, instead of pistol skills. But anyway, if you take Duelist Discipline, what it does is it reduces the cooldown on your pistol abilities by 20%. So you can actually see that the 20 went down to 16 here. And then if you take in Illusions, this talent, Illusionist's Celerity, it reduces your illusion summoning skills by 20%. Now the tooltip won't update. It says 16 seconds still. However, it is not true, and I will show you. You can watch down here. When I summon, it's actually not 16. It's 11 or 12 is really what it is. It just shows the first. So you actually can get your pistol down to 12 seconds, which is not bad considering. It's actually quite good. So if you were dealing with a 15-second cooldown on base on the pistol instead of 20, which is what it actually is. Let me just pull my talents off here so that you can see. The base is 20 now. This is too strong at 15, because if you reduce 15 by 20%, you're reducing it by 3 seconds, right? Because 10% is 1.5. So that's 15, that's to 12. And then if you reduce it by another 20%, that's to 9. Now the cooldown on the duelist's actual attack is between 5 and 6 seconds. So what this means is that there isn't any risk to shattering your duelist at all whatsoever, because you can just summon another one, and it's almost as if you account for the time that the duelist takes to fire its shots, it's almost as if the duelist was it's like it's just recharging essentially. You can shatter it without interruption in its damage almost. Additionally, you can pump them out, and the more you know that obviously a phantasm will summon and attack immediately, and what'll happen is you're essentially preventing that from happening, because what a lot of Mesmers are doing in PvP is they were summoning a bunch of phantasms really, really quickly and then playing defense, going invisible, blinking away, using null field, etc., and just trying to play keep away while your phantasms do damage. And that's not really a viable strategy. It's kind of lame. One thing that I will say though is that Illusionist Celerity, this talent, is so much more important now. It's a shame, actually, that it is. It's 5 points, and you should always be getting it, no matter what, period, end of story, if you're in any kind of build that summons anything, which, I mean, if you're a Mesmer, that's what you're doing. So, Illusionist Celerity is an absolute must. Commentary on what I feel about that, I don't love that, because any type of situation where you're forced to take a certain talent in order to be viable is not so great. And I think that the only exception to this type of thing would be a mantra build, and I personally hate mantra builds. I think they're terrible. I don't love the way that mantras work. I just don't think that they're as effective. That could just be me. There are probably some very good mantra players out there, but for me, I don't love it. So all is not lost, my friends. The nerf was kind of warranted. It isn't so bad, and actually what they did is they brought the duelist in line with the greatsword phantasm. So the duelist is 20 seconds, and actually the greatsword is 20 seconds too. And the staff is, how many is this? Is 18. A quick word about Chaos Storm, Chaos Armor. Chaos Armor was 40 seconds. Chaos Storm, I can't remember what it was in the beta. Chaos Storm is ridiculous. We've already discussed this. And Chaos Armor is also, it's the best protective armor in the game. 5 seconds on each is not a big deal. It's just pushing it a little bit more in line, because the staff was one of the primary ways that a Mesmer could just play defensively and hide, essentially. You go hide, you put the Chaos Storm down, you get Aegis repeating multiple times, you Chaos Armor yourself, you can run away while they get, conditions put on them, you can blink away with Phase Retreat, etc. So there's no reason to complain too much about that. It was warranted. So those are my comments on the recent nerfs and stuff like that. Let's hop into the traits and look at it. So domination is adding power and condition duration, and I'm gonna do this quickly, guys, because I want to show you some footage. So domination is power and condition damage. Dueling is precision and critical damage. Chaos is toughness and boon duration. This actually, incidentally, boon duration is great with your staff. It's great with some other stuff too, but particularly your staff. Inspiration, vitality and healing, illusions, condition damage, and shredding recharge rate. Now they call it shredding, but it really is shattering. So this makes your shatters recharge quickly. The tooltips, I don't know if they actually update. Let me just throw a 30 point in here and see if they've changed it. No, the tooltips don't update, but it is true that actually the 30%, your mind rack will go down to about 12 seconds or so. It's 15 minus 3. So it's very, very strong if you're in a shatter build. So let's look at some traits and try to get a theme idea of what's going on here. So let's touch the minor traits in domination. We've got illusion of vulnerability, 5 seconds vulnerability when you interrupt. So you can put this in the bucket of, ooh, this is good when I want to play a build that it does a lot of interrupting. And this is kind of like, you can kind of sort the traits based on these ideas. You want to put them in certain buckets, and then, you know, as the bucket fills up with traits, these are the traits you want to take if you want to do X, Y, or Z. Dazzling and inflicting daze also causes vulnerability, so you know, you can put this in a daze build. It could also work well in an interrupting build in some cases as well. And then you've got Wastrel's Punishment, which you deal extra damage to people who are inactive. Now, inactive means that you've stunned them or something along those lines. Now, this also ties into the same kind of idea, which is interrupting. That's actually very good. And this, you know, these can all actually potentially be put in the same bucket, which is nice. Personally, I use these as incidentals. I don't really make builds around these particular minor traits. But let's look at the Adept really quick. So Mind Rack causes extra damage. Obviously, this is for a shattering build of some variety. Extra damage while interrupting. Now this makes sense, or deal damage while interrupting. This makes sense in an interrupting type of build. So maybe you want to play with a pistol and an offhanded sword or something like that, or a great sword and use the great sword to knock people back and interrupt that way. All of these things are viable. You can test out Halting Strike. I don't particularly love interrupting builds, particularly because I think they're very difficult to play. I think that the short and moderately short cast times on all of the abilities, they aren't instant. Like the Great Sword's interrupt is a half-second cast, but especially in PvP, a half second is an eternity. And if you know someone's going to heal, you can sort of try to preempt them. But you know, other MMO games have instant interrupts, and that's a lot more reliable in my opinion. A half second really isn't enough. Now it could be great in PvE, especially for CCing mobs. Like you can make an interrupting build like that, and that's, you know, potentially really good. You can, you know, for example, what other abilities interrupt? Signet of Domination interrupts. You know, it's a stun. So, and this is a 1/4 second cast, so that's actually pretty nice. You know, you can use the daze, the mantra of distraction, to daze someone while they're in the middle of a cast. So you can totally build around this if you want to, and that's essentially build theory in a nutshell. Empowered Illusions is it makes your illusions deal more damage. This is actually almost identical to Phantasmal Strength down here in Inspiration, which says Phantasms do 15% more damage, so maybe you take both, because illusions dealing more damage, I mean, your clones don't deal any damage anyway, and this will not affect the condition damage on any clones summoned by your staff, or any clones that apply bleeding via sharper images, because that condition, the bleeds or the burning or whatever, is all based on your personal condition damage. So this actually only really applies to Phantasms anyway. So maybe you take both and you say Phantasms do 30% more damage. And that's actually a very popular build, and it's something that a lot of people were doing and playing defensively, hence the nerfs. Still very viable though, still quite good. Rending Shatter, so shattering causes vulnerability, so this ties into the Mind Rack talent here. Maybe you want to make a shatter type build. Clones cripple nearby foes when they're killed. We saw that in a clone spamming type of build where you want to kite a lot. This could be very good. And Signet Mastery, Signets recharge quicker. So like all the other classes, you have these different types of spells like mantras and manipulations and signets, etc. There will be a trait for each of them. So signets are recharging quicker. In the Master Tree, what we add is Shatters also remove a boon on hit. So this ties into the Mind Rack actually quite well. You Mind Rack and then you can rip boons like regeneration and protection and things like that. So, you know, if maybe your guys trickle in, and they always do when you shatter, you can get lucky, or you're giving yourself the opportunity to prevent damage prevention abilities on your opponent, and then you can shatter and, you know, deal more damage with the subsequent clones that are coming in, or illusions that are coming in on the shatter. So this is quite good. I really like this trait. Glamour skills cause confusion. Now this is enter or exit their areas. So what that means is, like with Null Field, for example, it's if I cross in or cross out. It doesn't mean when it's cast on someone's head. So you have to cross the line here in order for that to work. That's still really strong, and actually there's a good world versus world video that I have some footage on that shows how this can be used. So this is tied in with glamours. So okay, this is a glamour confusion build. What other traits are around that deal with that? Like for example, there is Master of Misdirection that says your confusion lasts longer, and there's also I can't remember exactly where it is, but we'll come to it. It's the glamour skills recharge quicker. And they last longer too, so you can make a build totally based on that, and that's really solid in World versus World, especially because there's a lot of zerging going on and people don't really know what's up, so you can see tons and tons of condition damage coming from your confusion. It's actually very strong. Cleansing Conflagration. Now this is a trait of Mesmer's, they have basically weapon traits that affect the weapon in a positive way and also reduce the cooldown by 20%. You saw that with the pistol. It adds range and reduces the cooldown by 20%. Now, in this case, torch skills remove conditions. That means that summoning the Phantasm or using the explode ability, the Prestige, where you go stealth and then explode, removes one condition for each time you cast it, essentially. And then it reduces the torch's cooldowns. So if you want to build around the torch, and that could be very good if you're in a offensive condition damage style build, because or confusion build, because the torch itself is the Phantasm does confusion, and then the torch actually adds blindness when you disappear, as we've discussed. Now, there is a trait in the Mesmer repertoire that actually says that if you blind, you add confusion too, and we'll get there. But that's thematic, so this would be, if you want to do a build like that, this would be something that you'd look to take. Greatsword training, this adds power with a greatsword and then reduces the recharge on greatsword skills. So again, thematic to the weapon. And then finally, we have mantras can be activated 3 times before needing to be channeled again. This makes a lot of sense in a mantra build only. I don't love this because I don't love mantras, but obviously if you're going to build around mantras, then this is something you need to take. Additionally, one thing I dislike about the Harmonious Mantra specifically is that it's in a tree that doesn't affect anything else about mantras, which is very annoying. It also isn't really thematic with a lot of other mantra type builds or abilities, unless you want to get super creative, but there isn't really very much except for potentially Halting Strike, and you can use Halting Strike in a way to assist you with interrupting. So maybe you can make a mantra interrupting build. And then finally, 50% to cause a 1-second stun whenever you daze a target. This also could be in an interrupting build. I think it's pretty useless though. I don't love it. It's unreliable, and for a Grandmaster trait, it's pretty terrible. I almost actually never go 30 points into domination. I think it's a waste. So in dueling, we have 1 second of vigor on critical hits. Now this actually is better than you think. Vigor affects your dodge roll bar. If you have vigor, then your dodge roll bar fills up a little more. So as you dodge roll, the bar will fill up. Now, incidentally, you see how I mouse over this? If I click it, you can actually click the dodge roll, and when it fills up, you will actually be able to dodge roll in there. The default is dodge rolling backwards. Anyway, if you get a critical hit, it gives you vigor, which increases your ability to dodge. You'll actually fill the bar up a little bit more. That's important for a specific reason, but it's good anyway. Actually, let's just look at the minors as we did in the first one. Sharper Images says that illusions inflict bleeding on critical hits. I think this is a fantastic DPS increase, and it used to be a trait that you had to pick, and they made it a minor trait really early on, from the 3rd beta into live, actually. So I was really happy to see that change. It used to be that whenever you dodge rolled, you created a clone. They actually made that a master trait now. So I think that switch was good. And then finally, your illusions cause 3 seconds of confusion when they're killed. Now, similar to clones cripple nearby foes when they're killed, or where is it here? Clones apply a random condition to nearby foes when they're killed. Now, these two only affect clones, but this affects phantasms. So you could create a summon lots of guys type build and expect your opponents or mobs or whatever to kill them, and then if that happens, you get some bonus out of it. So this fits in well with some other things that you can do. It also fits in well with the dodge roll clone creating ability that we'll see. So again, thematic, and that's what you want to do. You want to think thematically. You do not want to necessarily commit to a particular idea. Or, I'm sorry, you do not want to commit to a particular build. You want to just create an idea and build around the idea. So this far-reaching manipulations says that your manipulations are a little further, so that's good if you want to do that. Phantasmal Fury. Now, Phantasmal Fury has lovely synergy with Sharper Images, especially something like, for example, the Duelist, which is the Phantasm that's summoned from the pistol. So, for example, if I run up here and I summon my Pistol Phantasm with this particular trait, we're going to pick up Phantasms Have Fury, and we're also going to pick up Sharper Images, so hopefully I'll have enough crit here. What you'll see is that it'll add multiple stacks of bleeding, in this case 6. The reason why is because each shot from the Duelist counts as one attack, which is really great. And now I'm not smart enough to have put on my Greatsword, so I'll stop casting Winds of Chaos here, let this die. But actually, with a Greatsword as well, what ends up happening is your Phantasm, the Berserker that does the spinning moves, he actually, when we should wait to get out of combat, he will hit multiple times, and if he crits on multiple occasions, you can get multiple stacks too. Not as many, but each strike from a Phantasm counts as one hit. So this is particularly good. We'll let my Phantasm kill while we look at this stuff. Actually, you know what? It's not going to let me change here, so I'll just try to get this down really quickly. So this is extremely strong. Phantasms have Fury, and for those of you who are really new, Fury means 20% critical strike chance. This fits in really well together, and Sharper Images is particularly good with the Phantasms that hit multiple times, specifically the Greatsword and Pistol Phantasms. The Staff Phantasm doesn't, the Offhanded Sword Phantasm doesn't, and the other one doesn't from the Torch either. Retaliatory Shield, so you get retaliation when you block. This is good, obviously, only with things that block, so the Scepter and the Torch. Or sorry, the Scepter and the one-handed sword in your offhand both have blocks. I don't love retaliation. It's not reliable for a Mesmer, so I don't really take this. But then there's Blade Training. Now this is precision when you wield a one-handed sword or spear, so it's critical strike, and reduces the recharge on sword and spear skills. Now I only actually have one sword in my inventory, but it doesn't really matter. You can see here that if I take that, and I think I actually did already, then the cooldowns on my stuff is reduced. So let me just move this out, and you can see that it's the cooldown is 10 seconds and 12 seconds here. So 10 on Blurred Frenzy and 12 on Illusionary Leap. And then if I take this, it goes down to 8 and 9.5. Now this also works for your offhand. So I'm just going to remove that for a second really quickly, and then I'm going to throw this in my offhand, and we'll look. It's a 15 second for Illusionary Riposte and 20 seconds on the Phantasmal Swordsman. So what we'll actually do is throw this back on here, and it goes down to 16 and 12. So if you're dual wielding swords, this is almost a must, because it actually reduces cooldowns across the entire thing, and it's in the first tier, so why wouldn't you take it? So it does reduce cooldowns on all of it, which is really, really nice. Additionally, Desperate Decoy is a great defensive spell. Cloak and Leave a Clone. So this is actually the decoy utility. When you hit 25%, essentially you cast decoy. This is similar to some other classes have some similar things, like Engineers have one where they drink an elixir that makes them go invulnerable, so they turn all tiny. And then Protected Mantras, so increases armor when casting mantras. So that's nice when you're channeling up your mantra, and is obviously only in a mantra build. So if you look really quickly here, Mantra Mastery makes them recharge quicker. So we're starting to see that mantras are actually becoming thematic in the dueling tree. So you would want to go into dueling for this, and we'll see what the 30-point talent has to say about that. And then Blurred Inscription, so activating a signet gives you 1 second of distortion. Now distortion is the name of this shatter, but it's also the name of the buff that you get that says you evade all attacks. So this means that when you activate a signet, you're granted 1 second of distortion. So interestingly enough, if you have all of the signet build, you know, if say for example you're using Signet of Inspiration, what it does is it lets you shift all of your boons to nearby allies. So if you, for example, have a staff out, drop a Chaos Storm on yourself, and then use Signet of Inspiration, it'll make you go invulnerable, and all of your allies will gain like the Aegis and other things that you've got. So that's really nice. You can use that in a build with a staff. Duelist Discipline is the pistol. We've seen this. It's misspelled. The tooltip is misspelled. It's good if you want to play a heavy pistol Phantasm build. That's no problem. And then Deceptive Evasion, I love this, is create a clone at your current position when you dodge. Now, a lot of Mesmers are running like a Shattery type of build, and incidentally, this doesn't work unless you are actually in combat. So I'm going to hop into combat really quickly. Just make sure I have some weapons before I do that. And what they'll do is they'll do something interesting, like, and I'll show you this in a little bit more detail, but they'll summon a Phantasm, they'll summon a clone, and then they'll offensively dodge so that they've got 3 up. They'll do something else, maybe they'll start a Blurred Frenzy, and then they'll shatter. Now this wasn't quite a full shatter combo because I'm not actually fully talented out, but and I'm not wearing all the right gear. But you know, if you see Mesmers in PvP especially offensively rolling, then you're probably going to get shattered pretty quickly. So be careful. I love this ability. I think it's fantastic. It's great in a shatter build. It's also great in a clone summoning build. It works well with confusing combatants as well, because if your illusions get killed. Now, granted, these abilities mean when they're actually killed, not when you shatter them. If it was when you shatter them, it'd be amazing. But you know, you can basically get some value out of your guys when they die. Then there's empowering mantras, which said that 4% more damage for each readied mantra. So you can actually, there's a mantra that's a heal. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 16% more damage that you can do with all your readied mantras up. Now, if you go full domination and pick up the triple activation, and then you go full dueling and pick up the other mantra traits here, you can make an interesting mantra build where you're dealing tons and tons and tons of damage. So that's good, and again, thematic. It sort of forces you to choose mantras, but you know, to each their own. I mean, that's still quite a nice thing. And then 4 seconds of fury when you interrupt a foe is thematic to the fury, or thematic to the illusion of vulnerability, you know, interrupting type of stuff that was going on in the domination tree. I think it's garbage though. Furious interruption is garbage, and the reason why is because I can just throw a staff on, and if I have a staff equipped and I'm running around with, you know, with a couple of staff clones up, then I'm gonna have fury. Like, I'll just summon, you know, I'll summon all of them, but you know, basically, like, getting fury and keeping fury, it's really not that hard. Like, even if it's just me attacking, like, and getting the bounce back on this, and the duration's quite high actually now because I've been getting the bounce back. But you'll see, I mean, even now, I have fury up from an auto attack on a weapon. You're telling me that a 30-point trait is equivalent to that? I just can't get behind that. Additionally, about what the domination is doing for you, it adds power, but it adds condition duration too, so you might want to get some domination stuff to help you with particularly confusion builds. And the reason why is because it's the only way to increase confusion duration. You can increase duration on other stuff through some of the armors. In the PvP vendor, we can look at them, but specifically, you can't increase the confusion duration any other way except there's one armor that says all your conditions are, one armor rune that says that all of your particular like conditions are increased. Armor sigil, I just wanted to check that. There's one armor sigil that increases all condition duration, but there isn't one specifically for confusion, so you might want to do that. And in dueling, precision and critical damage, they go hand in hand. Now, power and condition duration don't go hand in hand, but dueling is like all about critical strikes. Chaos adds toughness and boon duration, so this is very supporting. 10 seconds of regen when your health hits 75% is great. Regen is always nice to have. And this is great for your longevity. Here we have Illusionary Membrane, which you gain protection for 2 seconds when you gain regeneration. So that means that when you hit 75%, if you have at least 15 points, it'll give you 10 seconds of regen and 2 seconds of protection at the same time, which is good. And then finally, 5% of your toughness is given as a bonus to condition damage. Now, there is this rune called Rune of the Undead that adds condition damage and toughness, and then Rune of the Undead's 6-point, or sigil. Sigil of the Undead's 6-point sigil, like ultimate thing, like, you know, when you have 6 sigils up and equipped, you get like a special thing. Then what that actually means, and actually no, these are runes anyway. I'm sorry, runes are things that go in your weapons. Sigils are things that go in your armor. So Sigil of the Undead, what it actually does is it says that when you have 6 of them equipped, so 1 on each piece, you get another 5% of your toughness given as a bonus to condition damage, which means that 10% is given as a bonus. So that's a nice little thing, and a lot of classes have this in their support trees. They have this sort of like, use this and you can get the bonus to your offense as well. Let's hop in here and look at the actual traits. So 5 seconds of Chaos Armor when you rally, meh, not so impressed. One thing I want to point out about Chaos Armor is that when you cast it yourself with the number 4, you actually gain protection 100% of the time, which is fantastic. However, if you use a combo field, like for example, Chaos Storm and then a Leap, you actually don't get protection every time. You can proc protection if you get struck. But the way that you cast Chaos Armor and gain protection, it only happens that way. So specifically, well, not just specifically for that reason, but when you rally after 5 seconds of Chaos Armor, I would only really want this if I knew that I was going to get the protection right off the bat. And I don't know if this is an oversight. The combo field version of Chaos Armor versus the one that you cast on your staff. I think it is an oversight, and it's a little frustrating. I would like them to fix that if possible. And if it's not an oversight, we'd love some communication on that. Now, all classes have the take less damage from falling and then do something when you fall. This one creates a Chaos Storm, particularly good in World versus World. If you're jumping off of like a cliff and into a group of people, you can get a whole team doing this, and it can actually be pretty cool. Master Manipulation, so this is the manipulation skills have shorter cooldowns, so if you want to play manipulation spells, maybe this is what you want. Illusionary Defense, I think this is great for support Mesmer. Now this is anti-shatter because it reduces damage for each illusion you have active. So what that actually means is, you got to keep them up, so maybe you don't shatter in this particular case. And then we've got Debilitating Dissipation, so we've seen this. Clones apply a random condition to nearby foes when they're killed. And then Retaliatory Demise, so if you're down, you gain retaliation. Boo. I think this is crap. Could be better. So let's move into Mirror of Anguish, which says that whenever you're disabled, and it gives you the examples of what that means, you mirror the disabled back to the source, and it's got an internal cooldown of 90 seconds. It's great. It's a really great ability, especially if you're in PvP. It can also be good in PvE. If you know a boss is going to hit you multiple times for something, you can actually maybe use it. I think it's more of a PvP oriented trait, but I really like it. I think it's great. Chaotic Interruption, so apply a random condition when you interrupt. Oh look, more interrupt stuff. So this is vulnerability when you interrupt, deal damage when you interrupt, etc. So this is more interrupting stuff. So if you want to play an interrupting build, Chaotic Interruption fits into that. Cleansing Inscriptions, activating a signet removes a condition. So it seems like what they want you to do, because over here we have the signets give you 1 second of vulnerability. I'll find it in a second, but activating a signet also removes a condition means that signets will give you a little bit of a vulnerability, wipe a condition off. Very supporty stuff. Seems very, very supporty. And if we look at the actual signets themselves, one of them's a stun, one of them's a blind, one of them's a move boons around to everybody, and the third one's a shatter. But if you're playing a support build, you might actually want these signets because they all seem to be very good. Blinds and stuns are great for preventing damage on your group, and with the staff and Chaos Storm, you can really spread around a lot of love with all of these boons here. So this is really, really strong in a signet type build. And Chaotic Dampening is the added toughness with the staff and then reduces the recharge. So this is something that I pick if I'm playing staff specifically. I also take Celerity here, and your phase retreat goes down to about 6 seconds, which is just awesome. No complaints whatsoever about that. You can really pump out a lot of staff clones. And then finally, we've got, let's see here, apply a random boon to yourself when you interrupt. Again, interrupting, so that's interesting. I don't love this. I don't actually think it's that good, to be honest, though. Again, interrupting builds are hard to play, and I'm just overall, in general, pretty unhappy with the Grandmaster traits in the Mesmer trees. I don't often take most of them. There are some that I do, and we'll go over those. And then cloaking skills last 1 second longer. So we're starting to get into cloaking as a theme. So cloaking means stealth. So, for example, decoy makes cloaking happen, and veil, you also cloak during veil. Now, you also can pick up the cloak when you hit 25% as well. So this could be very good in a supporty build where you're in PvP and you want to play something with a lot of invisibility. Inspiration adds vitality and healing. So it's weird that the phantasm damage thing is in this trait line. It's a little weird, but this is also a very phantasm benefit type of trait. So retaliation to phantasms means that they reflect some damage back, which makes it harder for enemies to kill them, or it gives you benefit if they do try to kill them. We've also got here, let's look at the minors really quick, sorry. Phantasms grant regeneration, so if you want to play a support build that has lots of healing, you can get some healing gear and then keep your phantasms up. They'll have retaliation, which means that if they start getting damaged, they'll do damage back, and you want to keep them up because they grant regeneration to nearby allies, and regeneration is always a thumbs up. And then phantasms do extra damage, as we've discussed a couple times. This is weird. It's a weird spot for this. I think that it would be better if there was something else here, like maybe phantasms take 50% less damage. That seems like it would be really, really good in the inspiration tree, or phantasms have extra health. Now I know that there's a signet for that, but I think it would be nice to also have it in inspiration. It seems like, deep into inspiration, so that it would be beneficial only to people who wanted to play a support type of class without being overpowered for people who wanted to play super offense. Medic's feedback is a feedback bubble when reviving, so if you want to start reviving, you put feedback up. Now, feedback is the glamour ability that reflects projectiles, so that can be very good, especially in World versus World. Here we go. This is a glamour mastery where glamours recharge quicker, so this will be great with the glamours cause confusion, which is here. Glamour skills cause confusion to people who enter or exit their areas. Obviously, you want that down more, so this would be very strong to have, cast it more often. Shattering illusions grants vigor, so when you shatter your illusions, you can give people more dodge rolls, so yay. I don't really care about this. Remove a condition when you heal. This is good in a lot of builds, because it's in the first line here. It can be very, very strong. Persisting images, so phantasms have extra health. Actually, I suppose you take this and you do leave phantasmal strength here. So I guess, it is covered, so that's nice. You can tell I don't really play in the inspiration tree all that often, but especially not as a support Mesmer. I think it's a little weird. I think that it's such a good offensive class, but there are some builds available, and it's nice that the tools are there. And then move faster for each active illusion. This makes sense for a bunch of reasons. Especially if you're going to have lots of phantasms up, because the inspiration tree seems, it adds vitality and healing, it gives your phantasms regeneration, and it gives them retaliation, makes them do more damage, and they have extra health, so you can actually make them stay up for quite a long time, and play support, make sure that they're regenning guys, and that's definitely an idea. So however you want to build it is good, but that's a way to start looking into, again, build theory. Retaliatory demise, 5 seconds of retal when you're down. Ugh, yuck, don't care. Mirror of Anguish, we looked at that when disabled. The reason why we looked at that is because I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Sorry. Malicious sorcery. So extra malice when wielding a scepter, and reduces the scepter recharge by 20%. Now malice is condition damage, so if you're playing a scepter build that's heavy on confusion, for example, which is what the scepter is really good at, this would make a lot of sense. Especially because the number 3 ability on the scepter is actually the confusion stacking ability, and that's what you would want to have. That's like the idea behind the scepter. The other idea behind the scepter is in a shatter build, but I think the clone generation is a little slow. Then there's Warden's feedback, which focus skills reflect projectiles. So the line that the focus puts down that adds swiftness and cripple, it also will reflect projectiles here, and reduces the recharge on the focus skills by 20%. Now, incidentally, and you'll see footage of this, you can put the focus number 4 ability, Temporal Curtain, on a wall up in WVW, and push the button again, which sucks enemies into the Temporal Curtain. And what it will actually do is it will pull them off of walls. So that's like amazing. And that's why I actually use the Greatsword and a focus offhand in World vs. World specifically, because it's just way too good. Temporal Enchanter Glamours last longer, so lasting longer in conjunction with recharging 20% faster, and then Glamour skills adding confusion. Obviously this makes lots and lots of sense. Restorative mantras heal allies when you cast a mantra, so if you want to, instead of phantasm-y signity type of stuff, you can do like a mantra type of build and use that as a way to heal your allies. Don't like that though, not really a big fan. Then there's using a shatter skill removes a condition. That's, I guess, kind of nice. But it's kind of counterproductive to the idea behind inspiration, which is that you seemingly want to keep your phantasms alive because they're giving regeneration and other stuff, so this is weird. And then heal a small amount when you shatter. Again, strange. I guess they kind of want you to like choose whether or not you want to sacrifice your phantasms or not, but I don't really love that. I think that it would be nicer to have something that benefited you to keeping your phantasms up instead. Additionally, these two phantasms, the Defender and the Disenchanter, are very, very good at making you at supporting rolls. So this one makes you take less damage, and this one starts removing boons and conditions. So having a regeneration boon and condition remover guy up is really nice. So inspiration is definitely very supporting. And then illusions. Now I think illusions is one of the better trees that we have access to. Condition damage and shredding recharge. Illusionist celerity we've already talked about. Illusionary retribution. So all shatter skills inflict confusion. So Cry of Frustration already inflicts confusion, and what it does is every additional shatter, it'll do 2 stacks rather than 1. So Cry of Frustration can get you a whole bunch of confusion. And then every other shatter is basically Cry of Frustration as well, except for Distortion, because that makes you invulnerable. So that's not exactly the same. And then there is Shattering Illusions gives you Might. So this ties into a very shatter-heavy build, and that makes a lot of sense considering this also reduces the rate at which you shatter things, or reduces the rate of your cooldowns. 10% higher crit on Mind Rack, so that's the damage one. The damage shatter, obviously, that's important if you want to do a shatter build. Cry of Frustration grants Retaliation. Again, very good for shattering, also decent in an inspiration build if you actually want to shatter your guys instead. Extra damage for your active illusions. Weird in the shattering tree. Doesn't make much sense. This might be better if it was like 5% more damage and thrown over here in the Grandmaster trait line. Strange here, but I guess they want you to have access to it for other builds. Distortion grants Reflection. Now what that means is that if you use Distortion, then you'll start reflecting projectiles. It does not mean the Sword number 2 ability, which is also considered Distortion. You're welcome to test this out, but from my experience, actually, it only means like casting the Distortion Shatter, not obtaining the Distortion buff. And there is a distinction there. So what it does, though, is it makes you both invulnerable, but also start reflecting projectiles, which is really cool. Confusion lasts longer. As we mentioned, confusion is important in specific builds, especially that glamour build that could be really good. So an extra 33%, plus you can get an extra 30% with a full domination trait line, so that could actually be quite good. And then Illusionary Invigoration, if you hit 50% health, you recharge your shatters. So support build or shatter build, who knows? It's good in both. Then we have bouncing attacks have an additional bounce. Now we've already talked about this, the staff extra bounce. This applies to the staff auto attack. It also applies to the Great Sword's number 2 ability. The Great Sword's number 2 ability is Mirror Blade, which bounces around and gives stacks of vulnerability and stuff like that. So if I take it, I'll do it without taking it first and use it. It'll bounce back and forth, and the most I'll get is 6 stacks of might and 6 stacks of vulnerability on the target. But if I actually take it, that we'll get an extra bounce and I'll get 9. So that's pretty cool. So I'll actually do that really quickly. So we do it again. 1, 2, 3, back and forth. Let's see here. Well, it should have given me 9. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It will actually on occasion. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you know what? Actually, what's happening, I'm sorry, is it's giving 9 stacks of vulnerability because it's bouncing backwards. So it's 1, 2, 3, instead of just 1, 2, and back and forth. It's going back to the target once more. It's not bouncing back to you once more, which is a little bit annoying. But so 9 stacks of vulnerability, 6 stacks of might still for you. But it's still good, and it's a nice thing to have in addition to the other stuff, like the staff ability. It also, however, affects the pistol and magic bullet. Now it does 1 blindness, 1 daze, and 1 stun. But if you have this particular trait, it will confusion the 4th person. So it'll actually make the bullet hit 4 people, which is really nice. I think illusionary elasticity is great. And then you've got let's see here. Glamour skills blind foes at target location, which means that this actually, if you cast it on someone's head, it makes them blind, which is fantastic from a support standpoint, especially null field, because you can target null field around. And then right next to it, you've got cause confusion when you blind a foe. So there's this interesting glamour-y type of build that you can make, where glamour skills will cause confusion to people who enter or exit their areas, and any enemy who has a glamour cast on their head will exit the area, so you're almost guaranteeing that that's going to happen. And then glamour skills will blind, but then you can also take cause confusion when you blind a foe, and what that does is that means that when you cast the glamour on top of someone's head, they get a stack, and then when they run out of the glamour, it also gives them a stack. So you can choose something that gives additional confusion here. You've got 20% condition duration on confusion here, plus another 30%, 33% here. So you can see like a theme coming out. And this is exactly what I mean in terms of like thematic stuff. Additionally, the offhanded torch has a blind, as I mentioned a little earlier. it on the Prestige, which means that this blindness actually adds a stack of confusion now too. And then you've got the Phantasmal Mage, which he does confusion as well. And then you've also got a Signet that adds blind. So like, this is the type of stuff I'm talking about when I want to talk about build theory. You know, this is a build that's sort of even coming to fruition without me having to do very much. Because it's all built in, and you can sort of customize it to what you want. But you're picking things that, maybe you pick 2 glamours like Feedback and Nullfield. You pick Signet of Midnight. You pick probably the Scepter, to be honest, because that adds, I don't have one in my inventory, but because that adds confusion with the Torch. And then you maybe put the Staff on your offhand, for a little bit of extra control, and condition damage, because that's what you're going for here. You gear up for condition damage, and there you go. You run off to do whatever you're doing. So that's the idea behind build theory. Lastly, we have Phantasms recharge 20% faster in the Master line. What that means is that the Phantasms will actually cast quicker. They'll cast their spells quicker. And that's pretty good. That's nice for offense. It's really, really good in the Phantasm damage build. So really quick, let's look at something like that. So I want to take Phantasmal Strength over here, and I'll probably take Phantasm's Recharge 20% faster here, and I'll probably take, let's see here, Illusions deal 15% more damage here, and I'll probably take my Phantasms have Fury here, and I'll probably take the extra 5 points to make them bleed. Illusions inflict bleeding on critical hits. And then, let's take a look here. Phantasms have 20% more health if I want to keep them up. That seems like it's pretty good. Move faster for each active illusion because I'm going to have my Phantasms up. That seems pretty solid. And then 3% more damage for each of your active illusions. Look, this build just freaking made itself. And that's all because you kind of know the theory behind it. So this is clearly just a build that, I'm thinking up on the fly here, but it makes sense. And that's what you want to do with builds. You want to think, okay, I'm going to have Phantasms up a lot, so this trait makes sense to have extra damage. I'm going to have Phantasms a lot, so I want to move faster for each active Phantasm. I'm going to have Phantasms a lot, so I want them to have extra health so that they stay up. I want them to deal more damage, so 30% more damage on them. I want them to cast more often because they're going to be up instead of shattering, so I'm not going to shatter so much. I want them to bleed, so I want them to deal more damage, so I want them to have fury, etc., etc., etc. Like, all of these things are, it's all just themes, guys. Like, so again, don't trust builds, just trust yourself. Like, think of the idea. Now, then there's a couple of interesting traits here. Let's talk about Imbued Diversion first. Diversion hits multiple targets. So Diversion is the shatter that makes daze. Now, as we mentioned, there are some things like, for example, Dazzling that adds vulnerability when you daze things. There's some interrupting stuff that goes on. But the thing is that Diversion only hits one target. Now, Mind Rack will actually, and all of these other, well, these other two, because this isn't offensive, but Mind Rack and Cry of Frustration do AoE hits. Even if you're targeted on one guy, it'll hit in AoE. What this does is it allows Diversion to hit in AoE too, and you can see that that's probably, it would be overpowered if it were built in that way, because you could just AoE daze like an unlimited amount of people. Like World versus World, especially PvE, even SPVP, that'd be crazy. So you could take this in order to do that. But then there's Illusionary Persona. Now, Illusionary Persona is really cool, and it says Shattering Illusions creates the shatter effect on you as well. Now, I don't have any illusions up, but I'm going to walk up here and cast Mind Rack. You see that damage happened. Why did damage happen? Because I, as the character, count as an illusion for Mind Rack, or any other type of ability. So if I summon up some stuff here, what you'll actually see, I hate the spamminess of the Greatsword sometimes. So I've got 3 things up, and if I shatter, it's actually going to do 4 shatters. Now I'm going to go to my combat log, and you can see, let's see, actually I already have it up. So we're going to look at the combat log really quickly, and we've got Mind Rack, Mind Rack, Mind Rack, Mind Rack. So that's 4 Mind Racks that hit here, and that was Spatial Surge was the last one. So 1 Mind Rack, 2, 3, and 4. This also works for Cry, Frustration, and Diversion. It's ridiculously good with Distortion. The reason why it's good with Distortion is because you can be in mid-stomp, and you can cast any of these shatter abilities during any other channel. And that's the same with every single ability in the game. If you're channeling a spell, you can cast an instant cast spell, and all the shadows are instant. But you can actually go Distortion mid-stomp and prevent them from, interrupting your stomp or whatever. So like a Guardian has that like bubble that explodes, or an Engineer will pull you towards them, or a Warrior and Ranger will stop you, or Necro will fear you, or something like that. It doesn't work with the stealthing classes, but it works with all those other ones. you can in the middle of it go invincible, and guarantee your stomp, which is really cool. So I think that, and it's a necessity, an absolute necessity in a shatter build, because what you're theming to do in a shatter build is you're going to use the sword to get up in the guy's face, and like during your blurred frenzy, you're going to want to shatter. So, you know, for example, and this is a pretty well-known shatter build. I'm actually going to show you a really solid shatter build right now. Here, let's just jump into it really quickly. So mind rack, I'm picking extra damage on mind rack. I like the bounce because for the staff, you can pick something else that doesn't really matter. Maybe extra damage for your active, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, you could actually increase the confusion duration on stuff. Actually, that's not bad because all your shatters are going to inflict confusion, so it might as well inflict a longer confusion. You could choose that too. You know, maybe shattering illusions grants vulnerability, or maybe shattering illusions removes a boon. That's pretty good too. And then, you know, I'm going to want to create lots of clones so that I can shatter more often, so I'm going to want the dodging thing. And then maybe if my phantasms have fury, just so that I can summon a phantasm, use it, and then shatter it really quickly. So that's like a pretty standard shattery type of build, and I'm just going to throw on a weapon or two here, and we can go from there. So let's just throw on like a staff. Okay, so like a shatter build, the way that a shatter build plays and the way that you want to play it with like illusionary persona is you want to summon a phantasm, summon a clone, do a dodge roll, summon a clone, use number 2, and shatter. And you saw that I was actually still swiping with number 2 while the shatter was coming in. Sorry about that, guys. Someone jumped into my TeamSpeak channel and they want to go do a tournament really quickly. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll show you. Hopefully, I'll get some good footage, and we'll go from there. And actually, the timing is pretty good because this video has already gotten quite long. So the next video will include lots of footage and some examples of some other builds, and I'll get that out to you as soon as I can. Thanks.